Once again, I'd like to welcome you back to my channel, where we're going to go over the Artificer's Artillerist Discipline, providing a brief description of the subclass, as well as explain and set up the various features that are gained. Artillerists are artificers who specialize in using and crafting ranged equipment that can create destructive power of varying degrees. The artillerist can create something similar to an engineer's cannon seen in various online PvP games, called an Eldritch cannon, that can then be used as a nearly independent mobile artillery unit. They can also create smaller handheld firearms from normal wooden staffs, wands, or rods that will act as their normal spell focus, and this provides a varying damage output bonus based on random die rolls each time it is used as a spell's given focus. This makes the artillerist an excellent long-range support party member. Even if they can't always share the equipment they create, they can still use it to support the party in a varying degree of combat roles quite effectively. Finally, an artillerist is also able to provide a defensive bonus to the party at later levels through improvements they gain to their Eldritch Cannon feature. This gives everyone within range the equivalent of half cover. This type of character will be best enjoyed by someone who loves to find new ways to use long-range weaponry in various kinds of combat situations. So let's begin the process of explaining the various features and spells gained through this particular subclass. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the Artificer level into place so that we can select the Artillerist Specialization. And through that level, you are able to gain proficiency with Woodcarver's Artisan's tools, which allows you to use that to craft your Eldritch weaponry. If, however, you have already gained this proficiency while you were creating your character, you can choose another artisan-based tool to use. And once again, you will want to check to make sure under your Abilities tab here that you have Woodcarver's Artisan's tools as one of the proficient items. So Woodcarver's tools. And this will allow anyone looking at your character sheet to know that you are now proficient with that particular set of Artisan's tools. And as I have stated in the past, when you acquire your class specialization, you will not necessarily be given these set of tools that you have now gained a proficiency in. Sometimes they will be given as a quest reward, but in most cases you will have to purchase them. So in addition to the tool proficiency, you will also gain access to a new suite of spells. And these are all spells that will complement the long-range weaponry that you will now be able to lob through your arcane foci. Because of the way an artificer learns their spells, in fact, they actually don't learn them per se, they're just simply available for selection. Their limitation comes through how many spells they can actually prepare, which is their intelligence modifier plus half of their level. So in this particular case, this character, who is level 3, can prepare up to 6 spells. They are able to make use of any spell within this list as long as they have the level requirement and the matching spell slot or spell slots that they could make use of, meaning that you could theoretically cast this Thunderwave spell as both a second or a first level spell. So, with this particular character being able to prepare up to 6 spells, I actually only have 5 spells available to choose from here because I haven't added any 6th spell to this particular list. I can now actually go through and open up my Artificer's spell listing here, and because I'm technically limited to first and second level spells, I can simply drop and prepare another spell. So I'm going to take Web, for example. And now I'm actually going to set that prepared. But what about these 2 spells here? Well, these can simply be dragged into place. And once they're there, they will always be prepared, and they do not count towards your total number of spells that you can actually prepare. The limitation on the use of these 2 particular spells comes down to whether you actually have a valid spell slot that you could use to cast that particular spell. And again, any spell that has the ability to do so can use a higher level spell slot. All spells can do so, but some will actually gain benefits because of it. So let me know if that helps clear up how artificers actually make use of their spells. If it doesn't, don't hesitate to ask your question within the comments field, and I'll do my best to try to clear it up for you. The other capability or feature that you will acquire at level 3 is an Eldritch Canon feature. And what this feature gives you the ability to do is during a combat action, you can take out your woodcarvers or smith's tools and actually craft a tiny or small Eldritch Cannon. If you create the small variant, it will appear in a space within 5 feet of you, or if you create a tiny one, you can do so in your hand. Regardless of its size, it will have an armor class of 18 and have a number of hit points equal to 5 times your Artificer level. So if you were level 3, it will have a total of 15 hit points. It is also immune to poison damage and psychic damage. And if you actually cast a mending spell on it, you will heal it by 2d6 hit points. If, however, you are being forced to roll a saving throw or a check for your cannon, you will do so with all of the stats being a base of 10, so there will be no bonuses in play or that you can actually go through and use. And finally, once you have cast this cannon, you cannot do so again until you have finished a long rest or you decide to expend a spell slot to create one. However, you cannot do so if your cannon is already present. And it will automatically disappear if it's reduced to 0 hit points, or if you choose to dismiss it, or if it has been up for approximately 1 hour. One of the advantages of this particular cannon is that you get to choose its appearance when you create the cannon and whether it can actually have legs or not. With legs, it makes this a mobile artillery unit of sorts. Now, the cannon itself will attack when you attack, so it doesn't get its own initiative, and it is used as a bonus action by your character. Additionally, you have to be within 60 feet of this cannon in order for it to be used through your bonus action. And there are 2 things that you can do during this bonus action. You can cause it to move up to 15 feet as long as you have created it with legs, and you can activate it from whatever its actual action is from an attack perspective or whatever. Those of which are entirely based on the type of cannon you have chosen to create. And there are currently 3 types of cannons that are available to you: a flamethrower, a force ballista, or a protector. If you are creating the flamethrower variant, you are essentially creating a mobile burning hands unit, in that it will spit out fire in an approximate 15-foot cone in a direction that you designate that is immediately adjacent to the artillery unit. Anyone who is within that cone will have to make a dexterity saving throw or suffer 2d8 fire damage on a failed saving throw and half as much on a successful one. Additionally, if there happen to be any flammable items in the area of its attack cone, it will catch on fire. If, however, you have decided to make the force ballista, you will be making a ranged spell attack originating from the cannon itself and firing at an object or creature within 120 feet of it. On a hit, the creature will take 2d8 force damage, and there is no dexterity saving throw involved here, and on top of that, they will be pushed back 5 feet. If, however, you have chosen to create a protector cannon, it will essentially emit a burst of energy within 10 feet of it, and anyone within that 10 feet of who you choose will be automatically given 1d8 plus your intelligence modifier of temporary hit points. All of these are definitely things that are going to get added to the combat tracker. So you'll want to make sure that they're available for use within your character. And as you can see, a lot of these particular abilities are already here, including the ranged attack. Actually, in fact, the dexterity saving throw is also here. But this group is probably not set up right. So what we are going to want to do is move this to an artillerist group. And then once it's there, modify that artillerist group so that the ability is intelligence, the attack is intelligence, and, oops, I went right by it. I always do that. There's one that I always go by. There we go. And that the saving throw is set for intelligence. Actually, ranged spell attack. Now, you might be asking why I have set up the attack to use intelligence in this particular case. Well, the intelligence ability modifier is used by the artillerist itself, and it is generally used for all spell-related bonuses, saving throws, and attacks in this particular case. When you make a ranged spell attack, it tells me as the DM that you are taking advantage of your Artificer's abilities, which means you should be using your intelligence modifier for your attack range. Or your attack roll, I should say. In this particular case, it gives you a +7 to your attack, which isn't too bad. It's not overly high, but it's not overly low either. Everything else is now set up the way that we want it to be. The only thing that you will have to do as a player is track the total number of hit points that your cannon is actually going to make use of. In addition, you want to be able to ensure that you are tracking this based on a rest. The problem is that you want this there while you're actively using this. But you can also still use it as long as you have spell slots. So we don't want to actually go through and set up a number of uses here. In fact, that is literally something that you are going to have to track manually. And there isn't any real way around that. I suppose there is an option that you could potentially copy this. So if we open this up and copy it into here, this would be the one that you could use to track with your daily use, for instance. So once you've used it, based on your long rest portion here, you click that, it goes away. Whenever you use this, you would then have to start expending a spell slot. So that is an option as to how you can use to track that. And it's not an overly complicated thing to do. Now, I don't think I have to run through how this is going to work while inside of a combat tracker scenario, as most of these are fairly straightforward. You're either going to do an attack roll for the purposes of your force damage, you're going to do a saving throw for the purposes of your fire damage here, and you're going to do a heal if you create the third type, which is the protector type of cannon. So it's entirely up to you as to whether you want to break these out into individual ones or not. I did it in the previous video, just to give you an example as what that could look like for the armorer specialist. You might want to consider doing the same thing with the artillerist, but it's not required. And that finishes everything off that we're going to gain at level 3. So I'm going to move ahead and prepare this character to look at the Arcane Firearm feature. With the Arcane Firearm feature that you'll gain at level 5, you are now able to take a wand, staff, or rod and convert it into what's called an Arcane Firearm. That firearm now becomes the focus with which all of your destructive power can be cast. And as long as you keep that particular firearm around, its carving of the sigil that you have to put in it will remain indefinitely, therefore it will remain an arcane focus for you indefinitely. However, if you choose to carve those same sigils into an entirely different object, in fact, if you choose to carve any sigils into a different object of some kind, to make that your new arcane firearm, then the old one will go away. You can only have one at a time. In addition, only you get to use this. When you actually use this as a spell focus to cast any of your Artificer spells, you will be able to add a d8 of additional damage to that particular spell. This means it is something we're going to want to add to our Actions tab here. And I'm going to set this up under the Artillerist again. And you'll see here that it doesn't really have any effect. What we want to do is add a new effect and then set it up as Arcane Firearm. Semicolon DMG colon D8. And you can put a 1 there if you want, just for clarity. Now, the problem is going to be the type of damage that you're going to be doing. So if you're casting, for example, a fireball through this particular arcane focus, you're going to want to set the damage type to be fire damage. But at the same time, if you're casting, say, thunder damage, there's probably going to be a force component to that. So you're going to want to go through and set up some of these for different types so that you have them available to you and you don't have to keep switching them. But you can do that at the time that you need them until you eventually have them all. And this is going to be on yourself, and it's going to be on your next roll. And I'm just going to get rid of this for now because I'm just going to set that up as a generic damage roll for now. Let me go through and actually set up a combat tracker scenario here, and I will show you how this will work. So I've gone ahead and set up my combat scenario here, and I've currently got this adult black dragon targeted. Let's say for the purposes of example, this dragon has failed its saving throw here, and I have cast this spell as a level 1 spell. Well, what I can do, because I have used my arcane focus, the firearm as the arcane focus, I can now add this effect in place. Then I can roll the actual damage. And what you will see here is that it will roll the 2d4 as well as a 1d8 and add all of that damage together. And because I have not specified a damage type to the end of that particular roll here, it is assuming it is an acid damage type. So it's grouping it all together. I don't even have to set a damage type to this particular case. This will simplify things for me. So what happens if it was the thunder wave, for example? Well, that is thunder damage. So let's go ahead and set up that example. Once again, let's say that the dragon failed its saving throw. I have now got my firearm effect ready to go, and then I roll the thunder damage. What we'll see here is that it has done a total of 12 points of thunder damage as per this description. So it's already set up to actually generically figure out what damage type I'm going to do. I don't actually have to go through and create one for each amount of damage that I'm going to do. It's taking care of that for me, which means this is working the way that I want it to. And I'm kind of surprised that actually wasn't something that they had already configured as part of this process. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. So that covers everything that we have to do for Arcane Firearm. At level 9, you will gain an improvement to your Eldritch Canon capabilities through a feature called Explosive Canon. The first of those improvements is that your cannon's damage rolls all increase by 1d8. The second addition allows you to command the cannon to explosively detonate as long as you were within 60 feet of it. Doing so destroys that particular cannon and forces any creature within 20 feet of it to make a dexterity saving throw against your spell save DC, or take 3d8 force damage on a failed saving throw and half as much on a successful one. So this means we need to add it to our Actions tab because it is an adjustment to our existing feature set here, and everything else is set up. So I'm going to move this into the group called Artillerist. Artillerist. There we go. And the good news here is that this is all set up. All we have to do is pop this open so that it automatically calculates the saving throw value for us. The one thing that doesn't happen is that our cannon's damage rolls themselves have not increased. All we have to do there is make the adjustment here to say that they now do 3d8 of damage as opposed to 2d8 of damage. So we just drag another d8 into this box here. And that is the only adjustment we have to make because we're not adjusting the healing capability. We are only adjusting the damaging capability. And that takes care of setting everything up for Explosive Cannon. And the last feature that you're going to gain is called Fortified Position, and this will be gained at level 15. So just give me a moment while I set up level 15 on this particular character. There we go. All right, so You are now essentially a master of using your Eldritch cannon emplacement, and you will now have the ability to create two cannons at the same time. So yes, I'm skipping this. I'll get to that in a second. You can create two cannons with within the same action, but not the same spell slot, which means that if you're going to create two cannons, you will use two spell slots to do so. And you'll have to excuse the various spell slots that we have here. There's currently a bug that is miscalculating the number of spell slots that we have, as well as how many we have at various levels. So that has been reported to Smiteworks, and hopefully they will fix that as soon as they can get a chance to. In addition to creating those two cannons, you can activate both of them at the same time during a bonus action, which means that once you've got them created, you can now utilize a bonus action to activate both of them. You determine whether the cannons are identical to each other or different, meaning that you can create a protector cannon for one and the flamethrower for another, for example. Thus, you have a healing capability and a damaging capability within an X number of feet of you. However, you cannot create a third cannon while the other two are out, so you have to get rid of one of your cannons before you can bring another one forward. And this is still going to fall under the same rest period requirement, so that you get to create two cannons free once per day, but then you have to start expending spell slots in order to bring additional cannons out. The only unknown that I have at this particular point in time, and I haven't been able to find an answer to this, is whether you can actually create two cannons if you're utilizing two spell slots in the same action. I don't have an answer to that. So if you have come up with an answer, let me know. But based on the reading here, it doesn't necessarily restrict you from doing it, but it also doesn't say you can. It says, but not the same spell slot. I would read that as stating that I could create two cannons within the same action, but I would require the use of two spell slots to do so. But admittedly, it's still a little bit confusing. Now back to the first item here. Once you have the cannons actually out and on the ground and placed, anyone who is within 10 feet of those cannons, and yes, it does affect both of them, will gain half cover protection. They have to remain within 10 feet of those cannons, and this is because of a magical protection field that actually gets created at the time that your cannons are created. And that field is what creates the cover. The issue is that cover is very situational, which means that where your cannons are facing might not necessarily provide cover from someone who might be to your right. What this means is that it's actually better for the dungeon master to tag you with the cover flag when they are actively ready to attack you using a character that's going to have to pass through that cover in order to hit you. And the modifiers that I am referring to are available within this plus/minus category. So if you click, for example, this button here, it will have no effect to you unless you are attacking someone who is in cover. If, however, you are being attacked by the Dungeon Master, then on their screen they would select this before making that attack roll. This is what is going to happen. And that, in fact, completes everything that we need to do when it comes to setting up Fortified position. And the reason I say that is that you're going to be creating two cannons. You've already got the cannons here. You don't have to go through and set anything up there. Additionally, you've already been instructed as to how the cover capabilities are going to work, so we don't have to do anything there, which means we do not have to add Fortified position to our Actions tab. And with that, that completes everything that you will need to do for the Artillerist Specialization class, and therefore it completes this particular video. I hope you found this video informative. If you have any questions or comments about this particular video, go ahead and feel free to post something down below. In addition to that, if you liked or disliked this particular video, go ahead and click the appropriate thumb because it lets me know how I'm doing. Finally, if you haven't already done so, feel free to subscribe to my particular channel, as right now the total number of viewers who are actually looking at videos on my channel is higher than those who are actually subscribed to my channel. So it'd be nice to see a little bit of a subscription bump here as a result of that. But in any event, I hope you have found this video very informative and useful to you, and I look forward to seeing you again. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comment section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.